I got started with the Defenders of the Earth at Marvel Studios by being actually assigned to another show. And that show had some difficulties getting off the ground with other problems, not so much with people, but it's just that it dragged. And so I was asked by one of the company personnel could I switch and go on to this show, Defenders of the Earth? And I said, didn't bother me at that point. It was fine. So at that point that they switched me on to Defenders of the Earth. There was a couple other directors and people involved in it, but we all then got involved as a collective unit working on this to get the show out. 65 episodes is a lot of episodes. My assignment was we would take the scripts as they come in as a director, since they were already pre-written, a lot of the shows, and take it from the animation direction and watch do the backgrounds, get those coordinated, get the storyboard work done, get all the incidental models done, all the background colors had to be processed through each director, myself included, for that particular episode. So there's many people who were working on the show, and my job then at that point was to watch over and be the responsible party to make sure that we got the show done, one, on time, and two, in the correct quality that they were asking for, and to watch for all the problems that come up in an animation production and solve them. I had to learn about the characters and their background and history. And so, you sort of have to read the bio and understand where these characters are, why they are, and, it's a comic strip, sure, but for animation, we still had to have that inside us to know how these characters reacted, talked, and how they were supposed to be animated. I was lucky enough to acquire one of the original comic strip panels, a Sunday page of the original Flash Gordon's comic strip, which was drawn in the 40s and in 30s and 40s. I don't know exactly the date that I have the strip. And I have it framed, it's sitting in my office, it sits behind me. So and I've had that piece for a long period of time. So when this all sort of evolved that I went to work for Marvel as a director and got onto this show, I think Flash Gordon probably was my favorite because there was some tie into how I was looking at it, and I had a original Alex Raymond comic strip, and I had, a little understanding of the characters. When we got into the other characters, and that they were developed primarily for the show, the Defenders of the Earth, they weren't always comic strip characters that worked effectively all the time. They were there, but I think they were developed a little bit further for the show from what I remember. And they were fun because you could do a little bit more to them. I don't think their background and history were as strong as the other characters. So, when you wanted to have them do something, you could have them do it, and you probably didn't have to worry about, well, did I step over their boundaries of what they do or don't do. All great shows have great villains, so getting to the nasty ones were always fun. You could also tell in storyboards coming through when the guys would draw the storyboards. When the villains come up, they would put them in their poses and the angles, and they would just make them mean and nasty looking, and always do the ways that you perceive villains should be. They're bad people, and so it was always fun to see that. Well, I felt very honored to be called and asked to come in and do an interview on a program that I worked on 20 years ago. So somewhere along the line it has legs and it stayed around for a while. This had a following of people, if you want to call it a legacy or whatever, but comic books, comic strips, the toys are things that may have been produced over the years, and now to have a show done with 65 episodes, I feel honored to be asked to do this.
Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Out of the sky, his rockets ignite. Jets into battle, flying faster than light. Flash Gordon. Lord of the jungle, the hero hero who stalks. The beasts call him brother, the goes to war. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Master of magic spells and illusion. Enemies crumble in fear and confusion. Mandrake. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. His strength is a legend. His skills conquer all. Armed with his power, we never will fall. Lothar. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. With our new young heroes proving their worth. 4 become 8. Defending the Earth. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Defenders of the Earth.
Comic strips were read by millions. They were the television of the day, and the stars of the comic strips like Hal Foster and Milton Caniff and Roy Crane were as famous as Tom Cruise is now. The comic strips were so familiar that everybody would recognize the characters. When comic strips started out, they were mostly slapstick humor, so that you had Mutt and Jeff and Bringing Up Father and Blondie and Dagwood. The first adventure strips were Tarzan, which was drawn by Hal Foster and written by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers was an outer space adventurer and was the very first comic strip about an outer space adventurer and was very popular, so naturally the Hearst Corporation wanted an outer space adventurer for their Sunday papers. And they came up with Flash Gordon, a polo star and dashing romantic athlete who is kidnapped by the evil Dr. Zarkov and whisked off to the planet Mongo, where he fights Ming the Merciless. This happened in 1934 and was tremendously popular. The artist for the Flash Gordon comic strip was Alex Raymond, and did absolutely gorgeous work. Mandrake and Lothar, and also the Phantom, were created by a writer named Lee Falk, who wrote both of those comic strips for more than 40 years. An amazing record. In comic books, you can always have Superman and Batman team up, because Superman and Batman are both published by DC Comics. But it's much harder to get Superman to team up with Spider-Man because they're published by different companies. Similarly, in comic strips, it's easy to get Mandrake the Magician and Flash Gordon and the Phantom and, of course, Mandrake's friend Lothar to team up, because they're all distributed by the same syndicate, King Features Syndicate. It would be much harder, in fact, it would probably be impossible to get Buck Rogers to join the Defenders of the Earth. In the Defenders of the Earth animated series, the setting is moved from the present day into the future. And so you can have Flash Gordon, who of course is a spaceman, meet with Mandrake and Lothar, who in the comic strip are in the present day, and the Phantom, who people believe to be immortal. But the Phantom is not immortal. The Phantom is an ordinary man, and as each Phantom dies, he summons his son to his deathbed and passes the skull ring and the costume on to his son, so that the tradition of the immortal Phantom, enemy of pirates everywhere, is preserved. In Defenders of the Earth, you not only have the adult adventurers, but you also have their children carrying on the legacy. In the comic strip, even though Mandrake eventually married his longtime girlfriend Narda, they don't have any children. But in the Defenders of the Earth, since it's set in the future, they have an adopted child, Kashin. Lothar has married his girlfriend, as he did in the strip, and they have a son, Lothar Jr. And believe it or not, at long last, Flash Gordon and Dale Arden have gotten married, at least in the year 2026, and they have a son named Rick. The first Flash Gordon strip by Alex Raymond was in 1934, and the strip is still running today, though it is in reruns, I'm sad to say. Many of the very best Flash Gordon stories were written by a writer named Harry Harrison, who's perhaps best known as the author of The Stainless Steel Rat. Because I love these stories so much, I published them in a magazine, Comics Review, and I'm now publishing the Harry Harrison Flash Gordon, and it's quite different from the Flash Gordon of the 1930s. I'm, as a big fan of these characters, very happy that the DVDs of Defenders of the Earth and Flash Gordon are bringing them to a new generation of viewers. Of course, I hope that a whole new generation of readers will want to seek out the comic strips of Flash Gordon in my monthly magazine, Comics Review.
Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Out of the sky, his rockets ignite. Jets into battle, flying faster than light. Flash Gordon, Lord of the Jungle, the hero who stalks. The beasts call him brother, the goes to war. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Master of magic spells and illusion. Enemies crumble in fear and confusion. Mandrake. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. His strength is a legend. His skills conquer all. Armed with his power, we never will fall. Lothar. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. With our new young heroes proving their worth. 4 become 8, defending the Earth. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Defenders of the Earth.
My involvement in Defenders of the Earth came about in a kind of interesting way. I'd been working on a feature film for a Korean company in Seoul, and I came back to Los Angeles after about a year of living abroad and wound up working on a Marvel production that this guy was producing in his own shop in town. And through that I met Lee Gunther, who was the VP of production at Marvel, and he said he had this series, and he invited me over to have a look at it and hired me on the spot. So I got involved. The series was in development, but it was kind of all over the place in terms of where it was settling down. It hadn't quite come home yet. And they just brought me in, and I took it on at 65 half hours from the day I was introduced to it. The series was initially designed to bring the kids of the superheroes in to see if they could attract kids to the original characters, Flash Gordon, Phantom, Lothar, and Mandrake. They brought the kids in to attract a kid audience to get to know those characters and to get to know the main superheroic characters. And there was some initial changes in the beginning as it went through development. There was a daughter of Flash Gordon who became a son, and then there was a son of Phantom who became a daughter. So the series went through a lot of developmental changes, but the involvement of the kids was to just bring a kid viewpoint into a series with superheroes. Defenders of the Earth presented an opportunity to the writers on the series, because it was not a network series, that the creative overview came from the studio itself and not from a network executive. So we were allowed to take some liberties with the series. There were issues of violence that are always an issue in a children's cartoon, which we didn't overplay. But there was weaponry and things that we used and we could get away with that may not have been acceptable to standards and practices at a network. And because it was syndicated, you generally at that point you're selling a series through, and it had a toy line and all of the usual things in place. So it didn't affect the series in a negative way, and I don't think it was exploitive in that way at all, but we were able to take some of those liberties with it. It was quite exciting to work with characters that had been around for so long. I mean, Flash Gordon was coming out of my parents' generation. Phantom was, in way back, I think in the early 1900s, Lee Falk developed that character. So there was an historical context with Flash Gordon and Mandrake and the Phantom, all because they had been around for so long, had never really been exploited to the extent that they were being in this series. So it was really kind of neat to look back into their history, find out what was new and exciting, or how to bring new and exciting parts of their history into the series while exploiting their past history. And they are historical characters; they always will be. And it's nice to work on something like that has an historical past. The fan base for this series at the time it came out was really targeted to what they call an 8 to an 11 audience. It was embraced well by them. It had a good run in syndication, and we got some great feedback. Introducing young kids to these characters was great, and I think that it played well in the crowd that we were targeting it to. The release of this series on DVD, Defenders of the Earth, is I think it's going to touch a lot of people, because it still has a baby boomer kind of intelligence going on, and people are aware of Flash Gordon, they're aware of Phantom, there's been feature films, there's been other series, and I think it will skew to an audience of older, of the baby boomer generation, because they're going to see something that has characters they know. They know the history of them, they know they're historical. I think they're going to be excited to see that these characters are out, and in a situation where they're going to be digitally remastered and will look fantastic. The whole development and the creation of Defenders of the Earth as a series, there was a phenomenal group of talent on the show. We had some of the best designers in the genre. We had some great directors, and I think that just in terms of where it stood as a series, it was a little groundbreaking for the time, and it had a lot of historical value, but it had great characters, and the writing was great, and I think it turned out to be a really wonderful, character-driven, superheroic show, which is often rare in this world.
Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Out of the sky, his rockets ignite. Jets into battle, flying faster than light. Flash Gordon, Lord of the jungle, the hero who stalks. The beasts call him brother, the goes to war. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Master of magic spells and illusion. Enemies crumble in fear and confusion. Mandrake, Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. His strength is a legend. His skills conquer all. Armed with his power, we never will fall. No. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. With our new young heroes proving their worth. 4 become 8. Defending the Earth! Defenders of the Earth! Defenders! Defenders of the Earth! Defenders of the
I was doing a lot of television stuff in Hollywood. I mean, I've done over 500 television shows, but when the opportunity came up, I would do voiceovers for commercials. And when my agent suggested doing voices for animation, I said I'd like to, because I feel I have a versatile voice and I do lots of kinds of voices, and it's been fun for me. I went in to see the producer, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I think I'll do a voice like this. I think it's strong and mysterious." He said, "I like it. Okay." So that's the Phantom. They were a bunch of talented people and talented directors, and they were very conscientious and hardworking, and it was fun. And it was a great break for me, because doing on-camera stuff, acting, and then going to do animation and not having to be in front of the camera, but just your voice, was a kick. I enjoyed it very much. That's where I met Loren Lester. He was playing Rick Gordon, the Flash Gordon's son. We spent a year and a half doing 65 shows, and I got to know him, and I thought, this is a very nice young fella. I think you should meet my daughter. Now, my daughter is a very beautiful girl, so I wasn't trying to palm off, you know, somebody who was unattractive or she couldn't have a date or anything. And anyway, as time passed, I got to like him a lot. And I remember he used to do photographs. He'd come around, he'd show me and shooting me and doing animation with the earphones on, and he'd present these pictures to me of myself, and I thought that was very nice. So about near the end of the time that we were finished shooting, we had a wrap party. And it was a nice wrap party, and my wife came. And she met Loren, and she thought, this is a nice young man, too. And I made my move. I called Loren on the phone. I said, Loren, do you like boys or girls? He said, I like girls. I said, would you like to take out my daughter, Kelly? He said, just a moment. And he went away for about 3 minutes, and I said, where is he going? What happened? He went to look at our Christmas card that we send out every year with the whole family, and there's my daughter. And he came back and he said, yes. Well, they went out the first date, and they hit it off real great. And that is about 18 or 19 years ago. And they've been married all that time, and I have 3 fantastic grandchildren, 3 little girls. So Loren turned out to be a gem. I started out in films being very heroic. My first film was a picture called Friendly Persuasion with Gary Cooper, where I was the Civil War lieutenant in love with Gary Cooper's daughter, and I was very heroic. The same thing in Black Orchid with Tony Quinn and Sophia Loren. I've had ups and downs, and of course I was Reverend Snow in Three's Company, Chrissy's father, so I've been very good and funny. But I had been locked in for a long time on playing a bad guy. I played a lot of bad guys, boy. A lot of bad guys. And you know, someday I hope put a reel together of all the ways I have been killed. I have been thrown off buildings, I've been shot, I've been stabbed, I've been poisoned, I've been murdered, I've been blown up, I've been drowned. And successively, if they put that together, it would be very funny. Playing the Phantom was a good guy, a heroic figure, a noble figure, and I enjoyed it. And I think it's kind of memorable in terms of folklore of doing animation, because it's a very specific character, you know. And I was sort of, I feel gratified that my voice is that history. I think it's timeless, I really do. And I've seen a few segments of the show again, and I think it holds up very, very well. And the shows are interesting and very well made, and the characters are very strong. I mean, you have Mandrake, you have the Phantom, you have Flash Gordon. That's incredible. These are memorable characters from the comics. I mean, when I was growing up, and here they are animated and forever on DVD.
Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Out of the sky, his rockets ignite. Jets into battle, flying faster than light. Flash Gordon, Lord of the jungle, the hero who stalks. The beasts call him brother, the goes to war. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Master of magic spells and illusion. Enemies crumble in fear and confusion. Mandrake. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. His strength is a legend. His skills conquer all. Armed with his power, we never will fall. No. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Our new young heroes proving their worth. 4 become 8, defending the earth. Defenders of the earth. Defenders. Defenders of the earth.
I've been a voice actor since the beginning of my career, so about the age of 16 or 17. So quite a number of years now. I was very lucky because at the time that I did that, you could be in different parts of the business. You could be a commercial actor and a TV on-camera actor and a voiceover actor. It's a little more specialized now, but in those days you could be sort of a jack of all trades. I'd say the characters I'm most well known for were on the Batman series. There was 3 incarnations of that show, Batman the animated series and a couple of incarnations after that. And I was Dick Grayson, the voice of Robin, and then I was Nightwing. So Dick Grayson graduated and became his own superhero, and he was called Nightwing and had a lower, deeper voice, you know, and as Robin, he was very much a superhero. What are we gonna do, Batman? You know, that kind of character, which is very much like what I did with Defenders of the Earth. Rick Gordon's voice was pretty much my own, but kind of amped up, a lot of energy behind it. And I think this show really led me into the Batman series because they were very close together, done very close together, and I think one spawned the other one, for me anyway, in my career. I think what led me into this series, Defenders of the Earth, was the show I did before that, which was G.I. Joe, and I had a recurring role on that. I played the character Barbecue, who was from Maine. And so I would say things like, well, we're gonna have to stop Cobra, you know, while everyone else was screaming. I was sort of like the low-key guy from Maine. And I think it was the same casting person or the same director or something, I can't quite remember, but they brought me in for the audition for Defenders of the Earth. And then I think there was a couple of more auditions after that, callbacks, and then finally I landed the part of Rick. In Defenders of the Earth, the character got to go through a whole lot of, you know, dangerous and psychological adventures. So there was a lot of wonderful acting things that we were given an opportunity to do with the scripts. Most of the time when you're hired for a cartoon series, you have to do at least 3 voices. And so besides doing the voice of Rick, there would always be incidental parts of a guard, a villain, you know, an alien, a robot, you know. So that was fun too, because every show we knew we would be doing at least 3 different characters. We had a great cast. These were just wonderful actors. The actor who played Ming became a very good personal friend of mine, Ron Feinberg. And he was actually a giant of a man who could have played Ming on camera. I mean, he was just a giant man. And a big, booming voice, but, you know, off camera, funny man and, you know, a gentle person, even though he's playing such a villain. I guess the person I have fondest memories of is Peter Mark Richman, who played the Phantom. By jungle law, the ghost who walks. We used to make fun of his voice, it was fun. But I have such fond memories of him because he introduced me to my wife. And it was his daughter, and we got married, and we've been married for 20 years. There's this one line that Peter Mark would always say as the Phantom, which was, by jungle law, the ghost who walks calls forth the power of 10 tigers. And we would all take turns doing that. That was really fun. Pete Renaday, who played Mandrake, a very elegant guy in real life. He could have played that part on camera as well, and terrific actor. And Lou Richards, who played my father, he and I were almost the same age, so it was pretty funny. The funny thing when we'd start rehearsal every day is that we would do the lines, but the director would read the descriptions in between. And he was a very funny, very cynical guy. And he would sit there and he would say, okay, now, let's see, you guys are sitting in a helicopter and it looks like a skull, and it's about to crash. All right, say your line. That was fun. any animated show starts, of course, with the storyboards and the script and the concepts and the creation of the characters. But what brings it to life are the actors who do the voices. And as you know, they animate the shows after they record the voices. So the voices are an inspiration for the animation that takes place later, and also, I think, an inspiration for the people who actually wrote it and created the show. So it's a huge part of the process, sort of in the middle of between creation and finished product. You have the voiceover actors who bring a lot to the process. Nowadays, you know, when you record an animated show, you're very lucky if you wind up with only maybe 1 or 2 other members of the cast in the same room with you. What was great about this show was that all of us were in the same room. I'd say probably 90% of the time. So it was done more like a radio show, and we could all bounce off of one another and pick up cues from one another in a way that I don't think you get the same quality when you're alone. And a lot of shows we do now, we do all by ourselves or with only one other person. I'm always fascinated with when you go on the internet and if you do a search on yourself or a search on a job you've done, and there are people out there with websites who are very interested in, you know, following. A lot of these projects have followings I didn't know about. A lot of people are interested in obscure and cult things that we did years and years ago, but are big fans of it. I hadn't seen the shows in a long time. I guess it's 20 years ago now. So I went hunting for them because I really wanted to see the show. So I went into a store that sells things for less than $1. Let's put it that way, one of those stores. And there was, you know, cassettes from Defenders of the Earth. I thought, this is great. And I scooped them up and I brought them home, and I was so excited because I hadn't heard this in a long time. And I popped it in, and it was in Spanish. So I literally have not seen or heard these shows for 20 years, and I'm looking forward to seeing the DVD because I really have not seen these shows for a long time. The legacy of this show is going to be, you know, I think a lot of people grew up with this show, they're interested in this show, but haven't seen it in a long time. So I think it's gonna be great to re-release it and have people see it again.
Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Out of the sky, his rockets ignite. Jets into battle, flying faster than light. Flash Gordon, Lord of the jungle, the hero who stalks. The beasts call him brother, the goes to war. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Master of magic spells and illusion. Enemies crumble in fear and confusion. Mandrake. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. His strength is a legend. His skills conquer all. Armed with his power, we never will fall. No fear. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. With our new young heroes proving their worth. 4 become 8, defending the Earth. Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. Defenders of the